Welcome back to Momentous Living. I'm Kevin, and today we have Olivia. And Olivia is a Pilates instructor, which one of my clients, a great client of mine, I've been seeing her for about 15 years. She put us in touch.
Yes.
And what came to mind was, first and foremost, I know what Pilates is. And I realized I don't think I know what Pilates is.
I've heard that a lot. I've heard that a lot.
I've been in this industry for about 20 years. And I was like, okay, so I think it's like a form of yoga while moving. And then I'm like, no, I have no idea what I'm talking about.
What you just said is what like 90% of people say. They're like, it's like yoga, right? That's what everyone says.
We're moving. I think there's a table made out of wood. I don't know.
Sometimes.
Yes, sometimes no.
Yes.
One thing I've always thought about Pilates, without even knowing what it is I preferred it over yoga.
Okay.
Because I'm not a fan of like static stretches. I like movement.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought of Pilates as movement. Now, my first question to you is, what's your background? What got you into this? What was like the catalyst that made you go, this is what I want to do?
Great question. I love answering this one. So just to put it lightly, I quit the corporate/tech world. I hit a wall. I knew that was not for me. So basically a little bit of background. I worked in marketing for about 7 years. I had various marketing roles. I worked in more of the corporate world. And then more recently I was in the tech world, but also a marketing type role. Basically what happened was I was kind of like telling myself that this is the job that I wanted. I was like working from home most days, great benefits, like decent pay, like everything was kind of like a cushy job where I was like working from wherever. And I was like, this is what I want. But I was kind of just tricking myself. Like I kept being like, this is what I should want. But deep down, I knew that it was not what I wanted. So I'm definitely more of an extrovert. I 100% get my energy from working with other people. So this whole time while I'm working from home with a laptop, I'm not getting that, I'm not getting that social interaction that I was craving. So yeah, I could have gone to the office, but still it's not the same thing. You're still sitting in front of a laptop. So basically I hit a wall, and this was November last year. And at the same time, I got this epiphany. I was like, I know that I want to work with people. Pilates has always been in the back of my mind. I have been doing Pilates since I was young. So I'll kind of just change gears here. I was a dancer my whole life. I'll explain a little bit more later, but there is a lot of overlap between Pilates and dance. There's a lot of that, like, body awareness, and obviously there's a lot of strengthening that comes with dance. There's a lot of flexibility that comes with dance. So a lot of the warm-ups and the stretches that we do at a dance class, and I danced quite competitively, there was just a lot of overlap. So that's a little bit of my dancer background. So I kind of just realized, I was like, if I could make a career out of this, why not? And I think what happened was my epiphany was really that I wanted to get certified as soon as possible. And I just wanted to dive into it fully. So why Pilates was because it's funny, we were talking about physiotherapy right when I got here. When I was in high school, I wanted to be a physiotherapist. Unfortunately, I was really bad in my high school science classes. I was like failing my high school chemistry. I completely lost confidence. So of course, I did not continue in the science route in my schooling. Like, why would I go into CEGEP, into a science program in CEGEP when I'm like failing science? So I went down the business route. I continued in marketing because that's what I excelled at. I was good at the public speaking. I was good at the people side of things. So of course, I never studied anything science related after grade 11 because confidence was like all-time low. But it was always what intrigued me. So I had my dancer background. I was always intrigued with physiotherapy and seeing osteopaths and like learning about the body. So that was always stuff that I just did on my own time. So I think what happened, I keep repeating this, but this epiphany I had was like, if other people are becoming Pilates instructors, like, why not me? And I did not want to go back and get a full degree. I love it. I love that you are. I didn't want to.
It's not for everyone.
I did not want to do that. I love that people go back to school, and like, if you want to go back to school, by all means, but that was not like in my gut. That's not what I wanted to do. Mm-hmm. So I kind of was like, well, maybe that this is for me. And the thing about Pilates is it's not as popular in Montreal as other cities just yet.
That's a good thing.
It is a good thing. So I kind of saw this opportunity all at the same time. So just to kind of connect the dots here, I was all-time low at work, not feeling happy, really dreading going to work. Like even just opening my laptop in my home, I was like, this is not for me, just completely dreading it. I was just kind of like, there's a gap in the Pilates market in Montreal. I know more are going to be popping up. And you know what? Since November, I already know that 4 that have opened up and there's more coming. So if you compare to Toronto, if you compare to Vancouver, Pilates studios are at like every street corner and they're these little like boutique little places. Montreal's not like that yet, but I do think it's going to come. So this is what I was thinking all when I was kind of deciding to make the move. And obviously you have to consider a lot of things if you decide to quit your job and dive into a new career path. Like that means there's a lot of implications. Obviously you have to do a lot of, you have to see if it's possible.
Yeah.
So I took a risk. I'll be fully transparent. I'm currently in the process of getting certified because it does take a while. So I've been gaining my practical hours. And that's kind of my story on how I got into it. It was really hitting a wall in the corporate 9-to-5 life. It was always in the back of my mind that I wanted to work with people and help people. Oh, I should have mentioned that earlier. I really wanted to help people and I didn't know what that meant.
Right.
So it's been in the back of my mind for years. I was like, I want to help, I want to work with people. And obviously, you know, my desire to be a physiotherapist when I was younger, it came from there. So yeah, it's all of that. It's working with people, helping people. And I just have such a passion for encouraging people to work on their health and mobility before they have issues with their health and mobility.
It's such I find this first question is every time I sit down with a professional in the health and wellness industry, because that's what we're doing, this question is such a loaded question.
It is.
Because you're like, okay, so my favorite color. No, it's just like
me in high school, me today, me in the future. There's so
much that goes into when you do something that it's just who you are. It feels like it's part of your DNA. It's like I have a lot of answers.
Yep.
But I don't know if they even justify what I'm feeling. Like it's just so hard to just make that package and deliver it. It's just so tough. But I mean, a couple notes on that. Well, when I was your age, because I'm much older, when I was your age, I would have never, ever gone back to school.
Interesting.
Not possible. I was not a science person. I was not a school person. I was not a sit still for 30 minutes at a time person. I was an ADHD person. So I think, and I speak was because I feel like it's almost past tense. I feel like there was things that I did to help that, but that's not the topic. The whole thing that I'm just trying to say is my route was not my route back then. And now I realize that me returning back to school was just a thought of, well, we spoke about this before. I like to learn, so why not?
Yep.
So coming back to you, I mentioned that I don't know what Pilates is.
Yeah.
But I think I know enough to be like, yeah, I know what Pilates. I can spot it. Like that's Pilates. But I don't even know what, I don't know.
You don't have a clear definition.
I don't know the concept behind it.
Can you explain a bit more what you think it is? Because you just said you think it's yoga with more movement. Is that it?
So for me, when I think of Pilates, I think of the body trying to have strength in a flexibility range. And they do this through movement, because the one issue I have with flexibility, it's not an issue with flexibility, but sometimes people stretch, but they don't realize that stretching is potentially creating an instability because they're not strengthening that range of motion. So if I thought about Pilates, I would think about let's get into a routine that could slowly work on your range of motion, but let's not forget about strengthening in that range of motion.
I love that. You know what word you didn't use? Mobility. So the term flexibility is the most used term, but the thing is you're right. If you don't have the strength around it, you're just like flailing around. What you need is that stability. So you're dead on. I think because you're in the industry, your description was like That was excellent. That
Next
was
question.
excellent. Like, check, you just passed the test. I'll put it in my own words. So I actually want to clarify something though. And this, a lot of people don't know this. So Pilates is actually based off a man named Joseph Pilates. Did you know this?
I had no idea.
Okay, so I'll give a little history lesson on Joseph Pilates, okay, because it's quite interesting. And this is where the term is actually getting, it's often misused. It might even be misused in some of my instances as well, but I like to take this opportunity to educate on it. So Joseph Pilates created this method in the First World War, so a really long time ago. What he was doing was he was promoting the concept of using essentially body weight and daily movement as a form of healing. So I don't want to like, it's obviously really hard to prove this, and there's a lot of theories around because this was such a long time ago. But the story goes that he was actually a soldier in the First World War, and he would, like the group that he was assigned to, they were injured soldiers, and he knew that exercise was medicine. Okay, so he was like, okay, all these men are injured and they're just lying in their beds. Like, how on earth are they supposed to heal? So he has this concept of movement as medicine. So what he ended up doing was adding springs to their hospital beds. So imagine this, you're in a hospital bed. He adds springs to the beds. And then you know what that evolved into is these Pilates reformers that we know today. So you were talking about these tables or these, whatever, you said a wooden table earlier. That is called a Pilates reformer machine. That's essentially where it evolved from. Now, again, that's like as the story goes. So picture this. You're an injured soldier. You have this one guy telling you that you should keep moving, but you're injured. But you know what? You can do some stuff because he added some springs and I don't know, maybe there was like a rope of some sort. So you're still getting some exercise in while you're lying there injured. Apparently, no one who was in that group, no one passed away because they were able to keep moving. Now, again, I really want it to be clear that this is like as the story goes. Like I cannot confirm that myself.
Was Joseph Pilates a real person?
Of course.
Okay.
Yes. That's where it came from. So picture this. These are these injured soldiers who are getting some movement in because you have this guy telling you that movement is medicine. Apparently, none of them die because they're the ones that are keeping active while they're injured. So that's one little story I've heard. Then this guy, Joseph Pilates, moves to New York, opens a studio, starts working with dancers. He becomes that's where his name really becomes known, and that's where he perfects his method. And then that's where he gains his followers, and that's where he really started the Pilates method. So I find that story super fascinating because it really comes down to exercise as medicine, which is really something that I truly believe in, like promoting mobility, promoting moving just from a young age. Like that to me is like the purpose of all of this. So the reason I wanted to say this is because no one really knows the backstory. So there is a specific Pilates method where I believe there was only like 34 moves or 36 moves, something really, really small. But what we're seeing today on social media and all these gyms that are offering Pilates classes, it really should be called Pilates inspired.
Okay.
Because it has evolved, and that's okay. And I love that it's evolved. I think that that's a really cool concept. It's just evolved over time.
Right.
But to answer your question, so that's a little bit of like a history lesson on Joseph Pilates. I also find it cool that it's invented by a man.
Yeah.
I think that that's pretty interesting.
Do you say that because it's a woman-dominated field?
Yes.
Okay.
And that I think could be a whole topic.
A whole other
that
topic.
We could get to. I would love to talk about that as well. But it is women-dominated right now, but I find it really cool that it was actually invented by a man.
I think that in this situation, all it takes is a special client. Because what I mean here is it takes one client to be like, guys, this really works. And you're like, so by the way, I have a friend. He's actually the assistant coach at the Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah.
And athletes need this not to be better at the sport, but need this to be able to continue to excel throughout their ages in their sport.
Totally.
You know, so what happens is that I heard this was a story I've heard from, elementary school. I heard that football players did ballet.
Yeah.
So to strengthen their ankles.
Yeah.
I think often they don't wear the little tutu. I don't
think it's necessary,
it's not necessary.
But it's a funny vision.
But I've heard that they often did this to strengthen their ankles to be able to do their job better.
Yep.
So, it is very interesting how certain things end up being a woman or male dominated industry. You know, personal trainers is kind of a male dominated industry, but there is no reason why the information between my ears is better than a woman's information between her ears.
Same thing for Pilates.
Right.
It's not for women. It's
Right.
for everyone.
It's for makes sense.
But
I mean,
it's
yeah.
because the branding of Pilates studios are targeted to women. The branding, the messaging, the whole angle for Pilates. Like no man wants. Well, if you are interested in trying out a new form of exercise and you walk by a Pilates studio and it's just women and it's like, you know, all floral and it's like it's not welcoming for a man to go in and try that. So to answer your question, yes, it's a women-dominated industry now.
Yeah.
Another thing I want to start promoting is that that's completely false.
Yeah.
You should try. More men should try Pilates. You'll see how hard it is. But
you mentioned something at the beginning.
Yeah.
What you mentioned was something, I forget the words that you said, but you hinted at preventative.
yes,
And one of the things that I love the most, one of them, there's a couple of them, but one of them is preventative. I absolutely love, I don't think enough people realize how much easier it is to prevent the injury
And to heal it.
opposed to
Totally.
healing the injury. So I love that that's your approach, because that's really, and when it comes to this industry, everyone's trying to get shredded and jacked and this and that, which is not synonymous with health. Which my last video was the top 5. So go check out that video. Top 5 health benefits. But I think that people need to understand that whenever it comes to health, preventative actions they should just become habits.
totally.
You know, like a couple Pilates classes a week, trickle in a little bit of training in the gym, resistance training, which is great for many different reasons.
Movement is medicine.
Yeah, absolutely. Get some steps and
Yes,
that's it.
Absolutely.
You know, so I love that you mentioned that. It just really confirms that.
Well, can I add a little? I read something about this. So I don't even know where I saw this, but I think I just saw it on Instagram again. But basically, I saw this post where someone was saying, like, at one point in your life, your health will become a priority. You might as well make it a priority voluntarily when you're young and healthy than when you're old and unwell.
Yeah,
So at some point in your life, it's going to become your number one thing.
absolutely.
I would rather deal with it while you're in charge instead of it being like a reactive approach.
It's more stressful.
Of
You
course.
know, you
of
all of a
course.
sudden you feel forced
Yep.
to do something, and at that point you're no longer like swimming. You're treading water just to try to stay afloat.
Of course.
You know, so
Also, if you don't use it, you lose it. So I think right now we are so used to seeing older people who are not mobile. We're so used to seeing our grandparents who can't walk up the stairs or can't even pick up their grandkid. But why isn't it the norm to promote? I'm not talking about like you don't have to lift heavy weights your entire life. You don't have to go crazy with your workouts your entire life, but just daily movement will actually give you such long-term results, and let alone expand your lifespan. Like that's a whole other point. So I think what's a little bit weird to me is like, I hope it changes with this generation, like with more research, but it really is the norm. Like how many elder people do you know that are completely mobile?
Right.
Like I know older people always, sorry, I'll rephrase this, but the amount of like hip replacements and knee replacements and all these surgeries that happen later in life.
yeah.
It's a touchy subject here. I don't know.
No,
but,
it's
like,
not touchy.
I don't understand why it's not a priority in your younger years and just rely on surgery later on.
Right. So with that, talk about hip replacement. Let's say opposed to sometimes people are prone to things
Yes,
genetically,
of course.
whatever. So we throw that out the window. That's not the situation
the
we're talking
situation.
about. We're talking about like basically inactivity that causes deterioration and regression in the body
Yes.
and basically atrophy.
Yes.
So one thing, I have a bunch of studies in my brain, but I'm never able to reference them because I just remember them throughout school. But I do remember a study that the percentage of an individual who is elderly, I don't even want to say the age, I have it in my head, But over a certain age, a hip replacement, a hip injury, so let's say like a surgical intervention that is needed from the hip, so let's say a break, a fracture, whatever, at a certain age, there is a very, very high increase in mortality due to it, not from the surgery,
Other complications.
not even the complications. I guess you could say complications, but it's due to the deterioration of the individual from no longer being able to get out. It's the overall, just they end up really withering away because their hip issue probably came on from immobility or just a very sedentary life, but they were still moving around and seeing friends, but they were getting more frail. And then all of a sudden that translated into now I'm really sedentary. Now I'm stuck. And then not being able to be around social.
Wow.
We have a little bit of experience from a little thing that we went through for the last couple of years where
a little thing
called COVID. And all of a sudden people were forced to stay home. And it's like, well, getting this was scary for a lot of people. There were comorbidities that existed, and we're not going to talk about those things, but the consequences of not socializing, which comes back to the whole hip issue, without going on all these tangents. Yes, like we need to just.
That's so interesting, but it makes so much sense. Absolutely, the social aspect on your well-being is massive.
Absolutely. Okay, so tell me this.
Yeah. Because
you spoke about why you got into Pilates. You spoke about what it means to you and what why it touches you. How you really want to help people and stay active and. Stay on top of things so we don't have to potentially be in a situation.
Things later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, how if you have a little story or an explanation, how has Pilates impacted you personally? Do you have a memory of Pilates impacting your life, or how has it in general? How has it impacted you? Do you feel that you have injuries from dancing or posture, whatever?
I get it. So since doing Pilates regularly, adding it to my routine, I've never felt stronger. And I want to explain why. So this kind of ties into what Pilates is at the beginning. So it's kind of similar to that answer. But if you were to take a bodybuilder who looks like they are the strongest person ever, often they're the people who have the most trouble in Pilates. And I'll explain why. So I'm sure you know this, but we have layers of muscles. Pilates strengthens the base layer. So those are the local stabilizers. So often we hear the term like the stabilizer muscles, like the little guys. So it's as simply put, Pilates fully works different muscles than strength training, like classic resistance training. So it's definitely complementary to different forms of workouts. So that's kind of why a lot of people think that, oh, I've been lifting weights for years. I'm in incredible shape. And then they come to a Pilates class and then they notice that they really, really struggle. That's what's really cool to me, is explaining to people, it's like, yes, you have the strength. You have that strength. I see you can lift those weights. But when you really come down to everyday use, Pilates is there to mimic everyday life. So what's more likely? Like, are you more likely to walk and lift a 10-pound thing, or are you more likely to like deadlift 200 pounds? Like, what's more useful in your everyday life? So Pilates, simply put, mimics everyday life by strengthening the little muscles that you don't even know you have. So since I have been doing it regularly, I've never felt stronger, and I've been lifting weights consistently. Honestly, I kind of really dove into this at the start of COVID. So I would say, like, let's just say it's been a solid 4 years of the best routine I've had. Adding Pilates, I feel so much stronger, because what happens is by strengthening the stabilizer muscles, it makes it so that the big guys, the bigger muscles, don't have to work as hard. So it's all about efficiency. It's body awareness, it's efficiency of your muscles. So another thing I like to explain to clients is your muscles are supposed to turn on in a certain order. So a lot of it is subconscious. So Pilates actually strengthens your brain by clarifying some like muscle patterns in your body. So that's what I find really cool as well. So what I mean by things going on in order is these little local stabilizers are supposed to turn on first, but so often they're not strong enough and your brain doesn't even know to do that. So what happens is the big guys turn on first. So you know what? You're actually using more, it takes more effort to do that movement. So that to me, when I learned that, I was like that was the most fascinating thing to me was simply put, Pilates strengthens the lowest level muscles you have. So often we hear the term like deep core. I don't know if I see that all the time now on social media. Like everyone's talking about deep core muscles. That's Pilates. That is using your breath and properly understanding what muscles to engage. It's not about, kicking your leg up as high as possible, but it's understanding what's going on in that movement to engage the proper muscles.
And this could be carried over, right? Because if somebody learns how to do diaphragmic breathing throughout movements,
Exactly.
then all of a sudden the diaphragm, when it expands down, it naturally opens us up into breathing the way we're supposed to. But then if we start to breathe from the intercostal muscles and the scalenes pulling up on, or even underneath,
you breathe up here,
right, and all these muscles, these accessory muscles that are aiding in breathing, and they're putting pressure on our ribs. So we have this like compounded effect of anxiety, which is a real topic today, real topic always, but an even more topic today, I find. And when we don't we don't take part in diaphragmic breathing, all of a sudden we're going to feel even tighter.
Absolutely.
So for you to be able to teach them how to breathe while using these deeper muscles and these secondaries, I could definitely see it as you're talking. My head is going like it's doing these things like that's
well,
right.
it's all related.
Exactly.
Now this is what I mean. What I just said, that is not the definition of Pilates. It just so happens to tie into the Pilates method.
It resonated with you when you heard this.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what I'm explaining, it was actually a physiotherapist who taught me that. So what I just explained isn't just, the lower level muscles equals Pilates. Like we do it in all classes. Like it's still applied to different forms of exercise. And breathing, like you just said, breathing is actually, it's incredibly important, obviously in all workouts, but in Pilates specifically, you're learning how to really leverage breathing properly to your advantage. So the breath helps stabilize everything else.
Right.
So we were just saying the use of the diaphragm and breathing all the way down to the bottom of your stomach, like that's what I explain in my classes, because so often people come to my class, and this is an interesting stat I learned, but apparently 90% of adults don't actually breathe properly. What I mean by that is so often like I was doing before, we breathe up here, like you were saying, you breathe up here. And that just comes, it's usually because of our, a chaotic lifestyle, or like we're hunched over at our desk, or you never have the chance to like open up. But that I find interesting. So when people come to my class, I always start off by getting people to align their sternum and their pelvis and just do some deep breaths to the bottom of their stomach, just to like get them into their like parasympathetic like nervous system, like get them to relax a little bit.
Yeah.
So a lot of things were just said there, but basically like it's important to note that what I'm saying with the like anatomy side doesn't just apply to Pilates, it applies to all forms of exercise, but I love connecting all these dots.
For sure. If more people knew how to activate their parasympathetic is simply through breathing, and in short, like a little tip when it comes to parasympathetic, one thing that we could do as a short, like a very simple tip is it's called many different things. We could call it, let's say, box breathing. And in the most concise way, make your exhales longer than your inhales. And then what that will do is it will shift you into this parasympathetic state. And for anybody that doesn't know what that means out there, whenever our parasympathetic system is stimulated, this is essentially gearing our bodies to have these mechanisms that are firing off, that are in tune to essentially bring down our heart rate, bring down our blood pressure, a lot of different things. Another way we could stimulate the parasympathetic system, funny enough, is through something that we call, the dive reflex. So sometimes we see babies going in pools and they're like, whoa, how these babies know how to swim? Like they go and they just start floating. And this dive reflex comes from these nerves that we have in our face, specifically the trigeminal nerves. And what happens is that plus cold exposure specific to this area has us in a reflex that puts us into this parasympathetic state. Not as a complete tangent, but nonetheless.
No, but it's a tangent, but it's important because so often we're not in our parasympathetic state, and that should be our natural state. But so often we're just walking around stressed out. And
just
we don't even know.
Stressed out.
And it affects so many things. Like when you learn what stress does to the body, that could honestly be a topic on its own. But when you learn what stress does to the body, you realize that like your digestion is off, like you're not even digesting properly. You're walking around like not even breathing properly. So all these things have like thousands of effects on your body.
Right.
So it's just so crazy that a lot of adults just walk around stressed and we don't even realize it.
Yeah. So I think almost everyone knows the term fight or flight.
Exactly.
But then we also have the term rest and digest.
Yeah.
So a lot of times we don't realize because we have these little muscles. See, I have an issue with tangents. I'll go on forever, but I'll finish with this one.
Because there's so many topics related to everything
exactly.
we're talking about.
But when we get to go into a parasympathetic state, what happens is we have these little sphincter muscles. And if we're stressed, the blood is going to be like, hey, the digestion doesn't really need to happen right now.
It's like, well, you're not safe.
Right.
You shouldn't do anything else.
Right. So it doesn't need to worry about flow here. But then if we could relax, the sphincter muscles relax and we get a blood flow going back in. Now, let's move on.
Okay.
And we'll go to, I think it's a great time to go to it where I wanted to discuss are there core principles in Pilates? Like when you go see somebody, how does it work?
So, okay. So this is where like, I wish I had my notebook in front of me, but yes, there are core principles, but it's definitely linking it to breathing. It's linking it to turning on your local stabilizers. So I think that term's a little bit more technical, but it's what I said before. It's essentially the whisper muscles. It's the lower level muscles. So all of this comes down to getting your body into a neutral position to activate the parasympathetic nervous system. So that to me would be the core principles.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think my answer is that. I think that there are a lot of other people will give you a different answer for everything. That for today, that would be my answer.
That's great. That's great. So I know we spoke about how this has affected you, but what could somebody? I think this is an easy question, but maybe it's loaded. I don't know. See, that's what happens when you don't know. When you don't know a topic, you think, oh, it's easy. Then I'm gonna say like, well, here we go.
Yeah.
What could somebody expect? Like, let's say I always think of 6 weeks. So for me, something I've learned throughout school is that typically if we stay consistent, because that's massive, if we stay consistent, we could assume that we should see physiological changes after about 6 weeks. Mm-hmm. Doesn't mean we don't get changes right away. It just means usually after 6 weeks of being consistent, we could assume that we're going to be like, oh, I feel a little,
Yep.
So take somebody 6 weeks, they've been doing Pilates at twice a week.
Okay.
What could they assume to feel from this?
They would feel improved body awareness first. So that to me is huge. When I say body awareness, I don't know if that's a clear enough explanation, but I just mean that sometimes people who haven't necessarily done this type of movement before, they might not be able to think of their body in the same way. But in Pilates, you're just lying there, like a simple move. It looks like it's the easiest thing ever. There's 15 things going on in your head to make sure you're doing it right. Okay. So when I'm giving my verbal cues to my clients, it's like, make sure your back is in neutral spine. You're pushing in through your feet. Make sure your energy's coming out of your knees. Your neck is relaxed. You're like I go on, there's 15 things. So all the person is doing is lying on their back with their knees up, and I'm making sure that they're breathing properly.
Right.
But the thing is like there's 15 cues going on in your head.
Right.
So wait, I had a whole other point. Oh, in 6 weeks. So first of all, it would be general body awareness. So like I said, like kind of just getting your body into alignment. And what I mean by that is like, okay, is your posture off? Posture improvement would be a huge one. You'd notice that so often we hunch our shoulders. So within your first 6 weeks, you might be aware of your posture better. like improved posture. I think also improved balance. What we're doing is we're challenging our balance a lot. So that kind of ties into our everyday movement. So we're mimicking, daily patterns. So like walking, just daily things like that. So like definitely improve posture, improve balance, overall improve mobility. And that term is kind of a loaded term in itself because to me, the definition of mobility is like flexibility plus strength. So I think you'd have a little bit bigger range of motion. I think just connecting all those dots. So, and on top of all that, if there was like an umbrella, I would say breathing would come at the very top and then trickle into everything I just said. So one of my clients actually, you know him.
Oh, really?
He said he said that now when he walks around, he's thinking of his posture and his breath.
Oh, amazing.
How simple is that?
Yeah.
Like breath is something that is accessible to every single human being. But if you can just get someone to be aware of their breath and their posture, that's what I mean by improved body awareness. Like you're just like, hey, maybe I should sit up strong, like straighter, and maybe I should breathe in through my nose throughout the day more. Maybe I should take some deeper breaths more throughout the day. So those would even be shorter than 6 weeks. Those would be almost like just give yourselves a couple cues. So the goal would then be for all those things I said to just be natural later on.
So it's like giving people, so one, it's obviously the adaptations, but it's also giving people tools.
100%.
That's amazing.
It's tools that you can do like anywhere. Like you're walking down the street now and I'm more aware of everything I just said. So if I can promote that within other, like for other clients, to me, that's like my job's done. Like amazing. You're already thinking about something as simple as your breath. Like that is going to change your day.
That's wild. I think that I have a business idea because I hear this and you talked about awareness.
Yep.
And my head instantly went like, proprioception. And then as soon as I think about that, I'm like, man, there are certain athletes out there that are amazing and they don't realize that they could literally take things to the next step. And I think Pilates is a phenomenal, because strengthening is great. But
it's only a small component of,
especially if you're not doing routines that incorporate the whole body. I see Pilates as really bringing in a very well-rounded approach to being, well, let's say we're talking about athletes, but it could be anybody really,
For sure.
of course.
Absolutely.
That's amazing. That's so
Absolutely.
crazy. So it's insane to think about how there are tools out there like Pilates that not no one, because it's a business, but that people such as myself, 20 years almost I've been in this industry, and I look at it and I think like, that's phenomenal. But I think yoga is doing a better marketing job, not a better job, a better marketing job. Because I don't even know, like to me, I hear yoga all the time, but I don't hear Pilates as much as I should.
You know what makes me almost frustrated with hearing that though, is that when marketing kicks off for Pilates more, when it becomes a little bit more mainstream, I think the message will be a little bit skewed. I think it's already skewed. I think it's already targeted. I think it's the wrong message being put out there. So my goal is to like have my own angle of all of this because there's so many benefits to it. Absolutely. But I do kind of want to explain a little bit more what it is, because I've just realized we haven't actually gone to detail of like what a classic Pilates kind of class might actually look like. So You're kind of dead on. Like if you look at it from a distance, it might look like yoga from a distance. I often start with yoga inspired moves. I do classic like downward dog, like we're doing some child's poses, but those are just overall mobility moves that most workout classes have anyways. But if I had to explain it, I would say often it's body weight first. I think all you need is a mat. So what I'm really pushing for now is I want people to know that you can get a brutal workout, like an amazing workout, and all you need is a yoga mat. So limited space, low cost, there's no barriers. You can do it in a hotel room, you could do it on a beach, you could do it anywhere. Like everyone has space for a yoga mat. So I think in the whole fitness industry, there's a lot of invented barriers for people where they're like, I don't have money for a trainer, I don't have space for a squat rack in my basement, I don't have time to get to the gym. But it's like, you can do a 15-minute body weight workout and you'd be dripping. I promise you, like I teach that. So what I'm pushing is this accessibility and this low cost method to really improve everything we just said, like body awareness, mobility, strength, You can do so much with body weight. So there's two types of classes that I teach right now. Obviously, there's a lot of variations of Pilates. So there's other equipment like the reformer. I personally don't teach that yet. Would I like to in the future? Absolutely. But the reformer is the machine kind of with springs and
yeah,
you have sometimes your hands are attached to it or your feet are attached to it. The thing is that's what's trending. Those are the classes that are incredibly expensive. So there's a huge barrier for accessibility for those classes. Like I'm talking like over $100 a session, more than personal trainer, because those pieces of equipment cost so much. So there's definitely a barrier to try the reformer aspect of things. And there's other equipment as well. There's like a chair, there's other things. There's like a thing called a Cadillac. There's all kinds of stuff. So there's a variety of pieces of equipment. But back to what I was saying, I'm trying to push this accessibility component where really all you need is your own body. So if you can learn the basics on a yoga mat and it's just your body with zero equipment, that's one way to kind of boost confidence to get people moving without considering all these barriers, right? So I only teach mat Pilates. Right now, there's kind of like two kind of streams. There's the reformer, more in studio, other pieces of equipment. There's a variety of equipment. And then there's also mat Pilates, which is much more body weight focused, or you use light weights and also a little Pilates ball. So it's really just a regular, you probably have some, it's a ball this big. So I teach classes with 3-pound weights and a little ball. The 3-pound weights, some people might be like, oh, that's way too light. Yeah, like I don't want the 3 pounds, like give me the 15 pounds. And I'm like, no.
You don't know, you bring this thing away from your body too.
So then you're adding in this core move with a 3-pound weight and you're trembling. So what I teach is mat Pilates only for now.
Yeah.
The class is, so you could essentially picture, like I was saying at the beginning, like picture almost like the same vibe as a yoga class. Like I start with a nice flowy stretch. I get people warmed up with their breath. I get people grounded and a little bit more like in the zone, I guess you could say, where we're really focusing on breath. And then that's why I remind them to focus on breath throughout the entire class. Like if there's one thing you have to focus on, it's your breath. If you need a break, just take another break, keep breathing in through your nose, out through your mouth, just focus on that. And then I move on, and you know what? People are sweating within the warm up. And it's a lot of like, people hate planks, but you know what? There's a few plank variations, a lot of standing moves where I have people standing on one leg only. And then it's really your core that's holding you up. So what I find my favorite thing ever is when a guy comes in. There's not a lot of men who come in my classes yet, but that's what I'm really pushing for. My favorite thing ever is when a guy comes in and I know he's a regular, he like bench presses 1,000,000 pounds, like really, really, really strong. Can't do it.
Yeah.
And then I go, well, wait a second. Like what we were saying before, I'm like, how often do you need to bench press 1,000,000 pounds? But yet core strength comes into play every single day.
Balance and mobility is very much more important. And this is why I think I'm almost, I could see it's the entrepreneurial side. I can't turn it off. It's just there. But
I get it.
I see it and I'm like, I think that's a good thing. Because I do think that yoga is just, if I ask my father, what's yoga? He'll be like he'll just have some sort of answer. And then I say, what's Pilates? And it will be a little bit more foreign to him. And I love it because I could see, I don't want to say I don't see benefit in yoga because I'm going to hurt some feelings.
Hey, I love yoga. I'll defend yoga. I'll defend yoga.
So I see that yoga has a benefit.
Yeah.
I see how anything that gets you moving has a benefit. And I can see how, having a professional run you through certain stretches and I could see that. So I'm definitely not putting one down at all. But I love the fact that, I know maybe a yoga teacher in Montreal, another person who has this like super big business and it's doing very good. They're like, I'm doing all right. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about an industry that has potential. And I love seeing potential. It's amazing because I see how yoga could be beneficial for anybody, but I could see how Pilates can be beneficial for people in ways that will increase performance in a way that they have never thought about.
I'll send you some stuff on Instagram. There's NFL players training with a Pilates instructor, and it's massive. Like it comes down to the stability. Like you were talking about ankle strength. That's like one little small part of it. But if you have this athlete who's like, running around really quick and they have like a hard stop, like that's not the big muscles doing that work. Like you need your little muscles to be strong for that. So
Right.
I can send you some cool videos, but I love seeing athletes doing it for sure.
Do you have specific conditions that you've seen that could be this could benefit them like intensely? For example, I'll give you whenever I have an individual come with the key things, lower back and knees.
Yeah.
If it's not surgical intervention that's needed, and I could see that it's very much a strengthening aspect and mobility aspect, I have my go-tos. Now, they don't always work, but I'll get somebody like, okay, let's do this. I want to get you to the ground. I want to see you do this exercise. I want to see you do that. I look at seeing if everything's balanced. I do little tests, run them through a little drill. They just feel like they're exercising, but I'm, taking notes. Mm-hmm. There are certain conditions that I feel very confident in what to do. What conditions that are common could Pilates benefit? I know it could benefit all conditions.
Yeah.
But what are certain things that a lot of people, for example, lower back?
Yeah.
Let me ask you that. Could Pilates help lower back?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So I won't speak from personal experience yet because I haven't encountered that yet.
Because you do Pilates.
Well, sorry. True. No, in terms of clients. So, you know what, if we talk again in a year, maybe I'll have more stories for you. But as of now, I haven't fully encountered that myself. But absolutely, I would say the most common thing is improving back pain. So here's the thing. Now, I might jumble this up a little bit, but essentially when you have a back injury, you need to retrain your brain to be like, hey, you're okay. You can move your back in different ways. So this is so fascinating to me, but a lot of people don't have good thoracic spine mobility. Okay, so obviously like kind of mid to upper back. What I mean by that is a lot of people move their whole back as one unit, and that's because of fear from a previous injury. So I think that it's subconscious. You don't even know you're doing that. But if you know that if you've bent down and you like tweaked your back coming up one time, you subconsciously won't do that movement again. So you're actually altering your movement pattern because of that.
And that's not the way the spine's supposed to be working.
So what Pilates does is it retrains the brain to have these proper movement patterns. So obviously, if you're very injured, I don't think that you should go straight to Pilates. I think you should talk to like a physiotherapist and get properly diagnosed and like that. I think that Pilates should be like step 2. But that's the cool part, is that it is retraining your body to be like, no, you're okay to do this. You can move these body parts separately. But what happens is people kind of tense up, and then you're telling your brain that, like, your brain is telling your body that it has to move as one unit. So obviously there's a lot more to that. I don't feel qualified to like dive into that fully, but I do think that back pain is the main thing that Pilates could help fix.
I think that's amazing. And I see, my head's like, okay, now
you can connect some dots. I'm sure.
I'm telling you, I wish I could be writing notes.
Hey, it's all recorded. You're good.
Exactly.
You're good.
It's recorded.
You're good.
Because what I'm looking at right now is, looking at in my brain, what I'm thinking about is when a Pilates instructor is now working in a multidisciplinary clinic where you have the physiotherapist who's like, okay, listen, this is the diagnosis. And small tangent, the back issues, there's some real ones out there, but a large population is walking around with a herniated disc and they have no idea. It's just that whenever I spoke about this in my osteo interview, and when people hear like I have a slip disc, they think that the disc is completely just destroyed. They're like, I have a slip disc. And now
they're like, I'm broken.
Yeah, they identify with their back issue and they're like, well, my back, I hurt. Like, you see people with back injuries and they're paralyzed. So a slip disc, it means how many months do I have? And it's like, that's just not the case. You could move your spine, as we come lower and lower to thoracic into lumbar, they move differently. Yep. So it would be so interesting to see a physiotherapist go like, okay, here's a diagnosis. And then what we're going to do is after, let's say 2 weeks that we're going to work on it a little bit, we're going to hand you over to the Pilates instructor. I'm going to work with her to say, these are some safe movements I want to see you work with. And then as the Pilates instructor is getting mobility and strength, then it's like, okay, and now here's the personal trainer or kinesiologist or exercise science,
And this
whatever.
exists. This exists, absolutely. In some
Right.
clinics, it goes from physio to Pilates. So sometimes when people have no idea what Pilates is, a simple explanation that I give is it's the continuation of physio. So that's why often when we're talking about is it for men or women, I go, is physio for men or women? And then people are like, oh, both? And I'm like, okay, well, it's like the continuation of that. So I have not been in that position yet, but that would obviously, I would love to do that in the future. But essentially, like when you go to physio and they're giving you little movements to do, think of how small they are, right? You have a little band and you're doing this.
Right.
Or it's like, it's never heavy. It's not usually the
Right.
heaviest weights. It's always little movements, right? That's exactly what Pilates is. So I kind of like to tell people, like, picture what you've learned at physio
Yeah.
with your bad shoulder.
Yeah.
It's that, but maybe it's in a group setting, or it's that, but it's less targeted to you if it's in a group setting. But obviously one-on-one is different. But.
People don't realize that injury rehab exercises, drills, things, that injury rehab, if you take those exercises and put them in another scenario, same exercises,
Absolutely.
they're
That's
called
exactly.
injury prevention. They're very similar exercises. I do things with my shoulders and my feet. And I don't have
you
injuries.
probably do Pilates without knowing.
Oh, really? I'm pretty sure that I'm
Pilates
in
inspired.
need. I'm in Pilates inspired.
Yeah.
Now, okay, so we talked about some misconceptions. We've talked about it's a girly thing.
Yeah.
It's really not. It's not even a person thing. It's an everyone thing. So that's a misconception.
Yeah.
We've talked about the misconceptions of like, well, not misconceptions, but I thought I was coming up with an idea, like get a physio to hand off, and it doesn't exist. But that makes me excited because if it does exist, I'm not aware of it. And if it's not aware and it's in the health and wellness, I'm like, oh, okay, we got some ideas.
Yeah.
We got some things that we could do.
Totally.
Is there any other misconceptions that you could think of?
Yeah. That you have to be flexible to do it.
Yeah. Okay.
So people are like,
Okay.
oh, I can't do that.
Yeah. That's me. I'm thinking like I
Or
need
like
to warm
you
up
see,
for Pilates.
yeah, or like you see like what I post on Instagram, you're like, oh no, I can't do that. But the thing is, this is huge. I like this question. Every single move is modifiable. Like everything. So what I do often is I'll start with a basic move and then I go, okay, I'm adding on. If you want to stay here, you can stay here. This is where private versus a group setting
You can play with
becomes
regression
really,
and progression.
Totally. But this is really where a private session is completely different than a group setting, because then you get to give that one-on-one attention,
Private
obviously.
is always the way to go.
Of course,
for sure.
of course. But, don't always have the luxury to do that. So when I'm teaching a group setting, I do that. I do base move and then, okay, I'm adding on. Okay, I'm adding on, and I build on it. So I think there's fear because they think that, oh, I can't possibly get into that position. This workout's not for me. But the thing is, it's like you can start at a basic move that everyone can do. There's even such thing as chair, like sitting in a chair doing Pilates. Think about what I said at the beginning. It was hospital beds doing a little bit of movement.
Yeah.
Everything is modifiable. So I think that the biggest barrier is people are just like, I can't do that, so it's not for me.
That's crazy. It's true. I never thought about that. You could do it. I did a lot of volunteer work, and I would most likely end up going back. It started from my master's. For my master's application, I need some volunteer work. So I reached out to somewhere called the Cumming Center in Montreal, and they deal with an above 50 population, and some have some just strengthening, but often it's post-stroke, multiple sclerosis, some osteo or like ortho type of things related, Parkinson's. I don't know if I mentioned that. And there are many situations that the person can't move. So you got to do what you can in the chair.
Yeah.
And you could progress. Sometimes they don't progress from there. Sometimes they're stuck to a chair, but sometimes just the movement gets them going.
For sure.
I spoke to a client. Actually, it's a client that I see 3 times a week, but I said this to her at the beginning of her little journey. And I mentioned that when we work out, when we move, let's say I have a knee issue or I stub my toe and I have some inflammation in the toe. If we can't move our feet and we're like, oh, I'm not going to go work out. I can't move my feet. No. What happens is, what a lot of people don't realize is, through consistent movement, we have, consistent is the special word. We have these what you would say as inflammatory cytokines and anti-inflammatory cytokines. So that's basically saying we have these two things that are causing inflammation and anti-inflammation. Now, what happens is, when we're consistent with movement, there is a shift, and we have less anti-inflammatory and more inflammatory. So if you have somebody who's stuck to a chair and they're doing Pilates, and they're like, their legs are really messed up, but they move sometimes, but they have issues, and you get them moving, this movement will benefit them in a anti-inflammatory way if they're consistent with it. So it's just this beautiful thing. I
almost like movement is medicine or something.
It's like wrapping it right back.
Crazy.
Okay, cool. Let's finish off with this then. What advice would you give to someone who is new to Pilates and might feel intimidated? I feel like this is targeted to me. I wrote the question. I wrote it. I was like,
I feel to you.
As you talk, yeah, like, shut up. I personally, I feel like I would be intimidated. I'm not even saying that for
That's
just
so
the
normal.
case. I feel that sometimes my posture is only good when I'm with clients, and then like I'll be driving and I'm like, what the heck
honestly,
are you
same.
doing?
Working on that too.
Like I'll notice myself. I'll notice my posture just like it's always when I'm driving. I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And I remind myself.
Yeah.
But what would you say to somebody like me, who I have a great deal of experience and I work out, but I'm intimidated? Or somebody who doesn't even do anything. Imagine somebody who doesn't even move.
I have two different answers.
Okay.
If it's you, I have one answer. And if it's someone who doesn't.
Start with me first.
For you, I would just say, kindly just get over it and try it.
Okay, shit.
Like, there's no...
We have another video ready for that.
I think that... Sorry, that's a little harsh, but I felt like you could handle it. I felt like you could take it.
I could take it.
I would say start it sooner rather than later, because it's just going to help you in the long term. Like, it's little things, like it'll help you prevent things like falling when you're older. You know, like all these things that come later in life, like just start now and it'll just help you.
Cool.
And I would just say, if you're just intimidated, I feel like you like a challenge, just try it.
Nice.
There's no barriers. All you need is a yoga mat. Like, really just need a few feet of space. I would just say, just start. For people who've never done anything like this, and they're kind of starting out their fitness journey, same thing. Start it sooner rather than later, because it'll just try a little workout from home. Like, there's so many videos available. I even have some, but like, just kind of just rip the Band-Aid off and just do a little bit, even if it's just a 15-minute test. Just start testing out your mobility. And I would say sooner rather than later. And start it from home in the comfort of your own home. Like, you don't have to do this big, intimidating studio. You can just like get going.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So then, that being said, you said you had a couple little videos.
Yeah.
So where could people find you? Are you present on Facebook, Instagram?
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram, but I also filmed a few videos for a company in Montreal called Pomme-Grenade. So I actually just recorded those a few weeks ago, and I have it's like an online platform.
Amazing.
So I have currently one series, body weight only, and they're 15-minute videos. So you can sign up for that. So that's brand new. And then I also teach at a gym called District in Pointe-St-Charles. So I teach 2 classes there.
Very cool. Yeah. Very cool. As well, I'll go ahead and put your information in like the description area, so people could feel free to reach out to you via email or whatever.
Amazing.
If so.
Appreciate it.
That being said, what an eye opener. Like, I mean, it's something that I think we all need. We all needed to have a little crash course, a little Pilates 101. I think that our paths will cross again, because I'm very intrigued, and I heard a lot of different opportunities.
Yes.
So that's
absolutely.
very, very cool. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
And
Loved it.
Until next time, we'll meet again.
Great.
All right.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. All right, guys, take care. Thank you again, as always. And feel free to like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys later. Goodbye.